For Louisiana versus all y'all, Jarrett Roser here with Brett McCormick, a guy that y'all know well on the channel from this specific event last year. For one example, the 2025 LHSAA State Championship Draft time is now here. It's Labor Day, Monday. I think this is, if not the same exact day of last Labor Day weekend, we did this, just a day off. But folks that watched it last year will remember just essentially taking some turns, picking some teams around the state that we think are some of the likeliest state champions or deep run teams. Just an opportunity to kind of look at some of the top teams around the state through a different kind of game format, to have some fun with it. And I'll kind of share some of the recap of last year before we get started. But Brett, how are you as you kind of gear up for this year's high school football season? I know you've already been out there through some of the preseason weeks, getting some great photos and everything, and trying to stay dry a little bit too, a couple of those days. How are we doing?
Yeah, things are good, man. I can't believe, it's here. It's week one already. And, it's, in some ways it's hard to believe, but at the same time, it's like, it's about time.
I told a couple of players this weekend that when August 1st hit, I really wished I had another week or so of summer. And then as August has continued, the first week of high school football regular season can't get here fast enough. And so I'm excited. We're kicking this thing off for real here in just a couple of days. And for folks that are kind of tuning in and eager to hear the teams that we pick and the teams we talk about, certainly looking back at last year, a lot of great teams we had the opportunity to talk about, but also a great example of how wide open some of these playoff brackets can be, because we had an awful lot of teams that were quarterfinalists and did not advance to the semis. We had several semifinalists that we picked. We only correctly picked 2 of the 8 state champions, and neither one of us got a correct state champion until the 8th pick in the process when I took Archbishop Shaw. And so if we don't happen to talk about your team, like, just that obviously means nothing. This is just a game we're playing to kind of talk about several teams, but there is a 75% chance in terms of like bracket by bracket, division by division, that we're not going to get the champion right, and someone's going to have a chance to prove us wrong. And so that just makes it all the more sweet for you to give us hell at the end of the season when you're a team that we did not have a chance to pick. And so certainly, regardless of who we pick, good luck to everybody, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully we do better this year, though.
Yeah, I hope so. It's always interesting this time of year. There's teams I always feel really strongly about one way or the other, and then there are teams that seemingly pop up out of nowhere to surprise me and have such a great season that wasn't even really on my radar at the start of the season.
And today, September 1st, was the day that the first LSWA polls, the preseason polls, got released. And I think every year everyone's going to have some level of disagreement with the preseason polls, and I am no different. I always have some areas where I feel like someone's a little bit too high, someone's a little bit too low. And I feel like this year there was more discrepancy even than in typical years. And I think part of that is a testament to how wide open and evenly matched a lot of these schools seem to, these teams seem to be. Some great teams out there with some really notable question marks that, give you a little bit of pause. And so when the writers around the state are voting and they're looking at a team and feel like it's a really strong team, but, how does this quarterback work out, or these new offensive linemen, or whatever the case may be, it suddenly gives you that hesitation of maybe I'm not going to vote them, 2 in the preseason, maybe, 6th until we figure it out and see a few weeks. But how kind of all over the place it felt like some of those votes were probably coming in, really did not surprise me that much, because I feel less situated going into this year in terms of who I think is going to win most of these brackets than I have in recent years. And it's always uncertain, but this year feels particularly so.
Yeah, I'm always curious to see the preseason poll being released because, I do my own rankings, and just like I know you do, and I'm always curious to see how my rankings stack up against, everybody else's opinion at this point in the season. And I try to tell people, a lot of people, the sports writers or the media gets a knock for their poll or whatever. I'm like, God, it's 11 different people and 11 different opinions. Yeah. It comes up with a consensus, but it's not one person's, opinion that goes into that. And obviously at the start of this year, there's so many different, views. I mean, there was only one of the 5 classes where you had a unanimous number one. In most classes, there's 4 or 5 different teams getting a first place vote. So, I mean, just looking at the preseason polls, everybody seems to think it's wide open.
Let's get into this draft without any further ado. Last year, we each took 12 teams. This year, we'll stretch it a little bit to 15 and just, try to be quick enough with it that we're not here all night talking about it. I mean, it'll probably be tough for us because we'll want to talk so much about all these teams. But similarly to last year, each of us has to pick at least one potential champion in each bracket and cannot pick more than 3 in a particular bracket. And at the end of the season, 5 points for every correct champion, 3 for a finalist, and 1 for a semifinalist. And so we can kind of get into it. Last year, you deferred and let me pick whether I wanted to go first or take the snake opportunity and being second and third. So I'll return that favor to you and let you, make that call, whether you want to start it off or take the first 2 out of 3.
I'm going to start it off just because there's one team that I think
I
has
really
a better chance than anybody else in the state to win it all. And I kind of deferred last year. Just they kind of hung around. And I was like, I'm not going to take them because I know Jarrett loves this team. Well, this year I'm taking them, and I'm taking Edna Carr number 1 overall.
No doubt. That would have been my first pick as well. And we did not take Carr last year until the 12th pick. You let me hang around and get them. And when I picked them, I said it essentially that it was a little bit startling that they took that long, but honestly, it was less of a knock on Carr and more of a matter of us thinking that the Division I select bracket, it contains such great competition every year that it's certainly possible for someone to trip up or somebody get the best of anyone. But I do agree, Carr is the team to beat in the state this year.
I still think if you were like, a betting man and you're like Carr versus the field, there's so many talented teams in that bracket that you may lean towards the field. But I certainly think with everything they have coming back and the guys they got coming in and their, just their reputation and that they're probably above everybody else from a division standpoint when you look at all the other divisions. And that's
fits their motto
towards the other teams in Division I Select.
It fits their motto, second to none, over there in Algiers, America. The team has the potential to be every bit as good as last year. Everybody they graduated, there is promising talent ready to kind of step into those shoes. It's just a matter of seeing how they, put it all together and be consistent over the course of these next few months. I'll go ahead and take. I think both of us have the same top 2 teams in the state, regardless of classification. And I'll take Catholic Baton Rouge, who I think is the biggest challenger in that Division I select bracket to the Cougars. I've told people since the spring that it felt like Carr was the team to beat, but that it would be another one of these years where at some point we're getting a Catholic Carr slugfest, whether it be the quarters, the semis, the dome, wherever it ends up being. That Catholic was the biggest threat in the state to Carr. And so while Carr was the team to beat, there would be a matchup that Catholic would have a chance to kind of dethrone them and take the driver's seat a little bit. It's a team that has to replace some key pieces of its own from that 25 graduating class. But the running back room is as deep as any. The 2 quarterbacks are back. They've got some good talent back on that offensive line. Blaine Bradford in the middle of that secondary and experience at all 3 levels of the defense. And I'll go the complete opposite end of the spectrum for my other pick and take a shot with the Haynesville Golden Tornado, that this is the year potentially that they finally get over the hump in Division IV non-select. They've been there the last couple of years. Ended up heartbreak state runner-up back-to-back years. Oak Grove was just a buzzsaw 2 years ago. South Platte was kind of a team of destiny last year and was able to scrap out a closer game. But Haynesville has been waiting to get back to the top of the mountain for so long, and they have another great team this year, quarterbacked by LSU commit Isaiah Washington, a 2-way star. And I think Haynesville, every year we do this, is probably going to be somewhere in the top group that we're picking.
No doubt. They're one of the safest picks, I think, that you can pick in this this type of situation where, you get points for a semifinal. They're going to be in the semifinals. I mean, that's just like historically, you better bet on it. They're such a great program. And at that level, if you have a dynamic quarterback, you can win a lot of football games, and they certainly have one. So it's a great pick. So I've got two, and last year I took a flyer on this team, kind of just let them hang around, and I even couched it as a homer pick, and then kind of had a Cinderella run, and had such a great season, making it to the Superdome and finished state runner-up in Division I Select. I'm going to take my Ash Trojans, who on paper losing JT Lindsay is such a big loss for the offense. But the key for this team, for me, is on the other side of the ball this year. That defense, I truly believe, has a chance to be one of the elite defenses in Louisiana. There's 8 starters coming back. Got Bryson Phoenix, who was a transfer who sat out last year, was a big-time player. Jaden Byron has put on 50 pounds since this time last year, and is going to anchor the middle. A lot of talent on defense. And then Carson Sellers is back as the unquestioned guy. There's no more rotation. The quarterback with Max Gassett out at Central now, and 2 young running backs who both are extremely talented. So there's a lot of talent and ability, and I definitely don't see Ash slowing down this year. So I'm going to take the Trojans with my second overall pick, and then I'm going to – this is a team that I think kind of dropped off last year a little bit, maybe to the surprise of a lot of people, though maybe we shouldn't have been as surprised with Jawan Johnson graduating and kind of having to replace them. But I really think Lafayette Christian is going to have a bounce back year this year. I have them number 1 in Division III Select, and I think they're going to have a big year. So I'm going to take LCA.
I agree with you there. That was my top team in my rankings for Class 2A, and I think is in that conversation of a top non 4 or 5A school in the state when you start roping the 1s, 2s, and 3s together amongst all the small schools. So great pick for sure. I'll kind of do a similar thing to what I did when you took Carr up top, and I tried to answer with my next team in the division, and I'll take the Dunham Tigers with Elijah Haven and company in that same Division III Select bracket. Those were my top 2 teams, LCA and Dunham, and so just trying to almost like handicapping a fantasy running back type situation, just sort of following up and making sure I get that next team. And for my second pick, as we snake it back around, I'm going to take another team that I think is in that conversation for a top smaller school team. And St. James, you got a chance to get them last year. They made that run and were runners up in Division III non-select, and they were still young last year. Almost that entire team is back this year. And so I'll go ahead and go with the Wildcats to try to get back over the hump this year.
Yeah, I'm really high on the Wildcats as well. I have them number 1 in D3 non-select, and that would have been my pick there. I really like that team and what they have coming back. And then I'm going to do just what you did to me. And this is a team that I'm actually, right now, if you ask me where are they ranked, I'm not sure they're in the top 10 in Class 3A. But at the end of the year, Lee Doty is going to have the Sterlington Panthers ready to play. And I'm going to take Sterlington. I saw them last year in the Jamboree against Ash, and I was like, this team's not very good. And then, they got it together, and they made a run and won a state championship. And you can kind of look at the same thing, they didn't look great against Ash. But I think historically what that program is and what that coaching staff can do, I think they're going to be right there at the end. So give me Sterlington. For my next pick, I'm going to go over to the Division I non-select side. And all my fellow Ruston Bearcats are going to have to forgive me for this one. But I've been on this train for 3 years now, and they can't quite get over the hump. But I think this is the year they get over the hump. Give me the Neville Tigers.
Yeah, I can't wait for this to get live and for your phone to start receiving text messages and whatnot on that.
Look, I love that team. Best safety duo in the state. Parker Robinson. It's a great quarterback. They always have skill guys, and they've been so close 2 years in a row. And I think this is the year that they get over the hump.
The Neville Ruston dynamic is so interesting to me. Obviously, Neville gets the best of the regular season game last year. Ruston makes the Dome, and then Central kind of has its storybook run. Neville and Ruston also play in the Jamboree now each season, and so they have the potential to run into each other at least 2, if not 3 times over the course of some of these seasons. And I believe the Bayou Jam was a tale of 2 halves on Friday, where Neville got up big and then Ruston came back, which is kind of a role reversal of what I would expect in terms of, the expectations of Ruston as a running team with some of what they have there and a new quarterback and whatnot. But obviously this is a matchup that when we get back to district is going to be nuts again. And then do they run into each other potentially deep in the playoffs? I'll go ahead and, as we're talking about the rivalry, I'll go ahead and just take Ruston right there as well. I think that both of those teams are right there once again in that top tier of D1 non-select contenders. And with everything Central has to replace from its state championship team, does Ruston get back to the top of that mountain and hoist the big trophy again this year? Does Neville, like you said, finally get back over the hump? And I'll go ahead and double up in D1 non-select. And actually, I'll go with Zachary this year, with knowing what Central has to replace. I think both of those teams are in for an absolute dogfight in district to see whether Zachary can get the best back of that rivalry. They've owned it in recent years until last year. And I think that win for Central was such a big part of their journey and their story for 2024. And I think that's going to be one of the most interesting games on the schedule all year around the state is, can Central go 2 in a row against Zachary for the first time in a long, long time? Or does Zachary answer back this year while Central is kind of reloading a little bit? I would have been happy with either one of them here. I'll just go with Zachary to, kind of show that, hey, we're still here and right there.
I'm so curious how that quarterback dynamic is going to play out. Well, from everything I'm hearing, and again, I don't know this for sure, but this is just what I've been told, is that Gassett has been kind of he's been running mostly with the ones in practice, but he was waiting clearance from the LHSAA after moving from Ash. He finally gets cleared. He does play in the Jamboree. And so I'm so curious to see kind of how that thing is going to play out with 2 really talented 2027 quarterbacks there. And I mean, if they can get good quarterback play, they got a chance. I think Central's got a chance to be really, really good. So I'm going to take Central. I really like that team. I really love what Semino's done. So I'm going to take the Central Wildcats. Again, I'm sure that's going to go over great with my Ruston friends. And I'm taking Neville and Central. So that's fun times.
I mean, look, you've got another pick here. You might as well make it a sweep and take West Monroe and then just, get weird with it.
I have them on my list as my potential sleeper. This 2026 class has kind of been looming there, but we're going to hold off on that. We might come back to that eventually. But I'm gonna hop over to Division II non-select. And I'm gonna take my friends from Stonewall, the North DeSoto Griffins. They've kind of fallen short, made it to the Dome, and then past couple of years hasn't quite worked out for them. But Luke Delafield's back for his senior year. They have a huge weapon at tight end in Miller Warren. They're always competitive. Coach Dunn does a really great job with that program. And I'm picking that this is the year that they get over the hump and they win the Division II non-select state championship.
What a way to go out that would be for Luke and Kenny and company in that 26 class. Luke obviously quarterbacked them to the Dome for the first time in history as a freshman, and they've just been right there as a contender the last couple of years, but couldn't quite get back. But that bracket once again feels as wide open at the top as any, and I'm really just starting to make a theme of essentially wherever you go, I try and go grab the next one or next two and sort of cover some bases. And so I'll take Franklin Parish out there in Winsboro, really talented team. Love that senior class they have as well. They had a historic season in their own right last year as district champions and making the quarterfinal run and bring a lot of the most talented pieces back, have some young guys kind of on the rise as well. And so I think that it's another special season on deck for Adrian Burnett and company up there. And
can I hop in, Rick? I usually don't interrupt between your two picks, but I did want to say, like, this is the hard part for me. Like when you have an ascending program, and they certainly are, when do they get over the hump? There's so much talent there. I had them number 2 in my list. I love that program. I love what Burnett's done there. I love that team. That's a great pick, but it's like, at some point they're going to break through. Is this the year that they break through and get to the Dome and maybe even win it? Such a talented program.
Absolutely. I was looking at potentially doubling up there, but pretty torn here in general. I will go ahead and take another Division I select team instead, and take a team that you saw toward the end of last season when they had started kind of putting it all together. But that John Curtis Patriots team, that similar to some of the other schools we've talked about here, you expect them to be really good every single year. And they had a bumpy as could be year last year in terms of the regular season. Their worst regular season record in decades. And then next thing you know, they're right there in the semis trying to battle Ash for a spot to the Dome once again. And I think they return enough from last year's team that it should be a little bit of a smoother ride this year. Nothing is easy. Nothing's given. The schedule is always brutal, but I think they will have guys that are more ready for that out the gate. And so they potentially end up in a better spot playoff bracket wise and just more momentum throughout the season. And I love some of their young talent too in those 27 and particularly the 28 classes. So we go ahead and go with Coach JT and company. It's a situation where that Division I select bracket, so much of it is the New Orleans Catholic League. And so a lot of those teams to make a deep run have to beat someone potentially twice or get a second shot at someone that got the best of them in a regular season. And if Carr beats Curtis and they run into each other again, does Curtis get the best of a rematch? There's just all kind of dynamics that play out when you have that familiarity amongst high school athletes and programs. And I didn't get Carr, so I'll go ahead and add Curtis to my Catholic pick from earlier.
Well, I got a chance to see them, last year in the semifinals, and two things stand out to me. One, JT's teams, they're not going to go 500 again. It's just not going to happen. They're going to be better. And then two, they were really, really young and really, really talented on defense. And that's a combination to be much better the next year. As those young cats grow, they start to fill out and put on some weight, and they're gonna be very, very good. And to tell you how deep that, and we know we can preach Division I select how deep it is. I did not have them in my top 5 on this list, and I have them ranked 6th in my overall rankings for the state. So that's how good that division is. I really like them this year. All right, so just to be clear, that gives you 3 Division I selects, right?
Should just have 2.
Okay, never mind. The
We
other
should each
cross out
have.
was my own.
Yeah,
So.
yeah,
Okay.
we should each have 2 there.
Well, then that changes my game. So I was going to hold off on picking my third one there because you had already picked 3, but you haven't picked 3. So give me Robert Valdez and St. Augustine. This is a team that traditionally always has talent. I mean, so talented, and I think this is the year that they kind of put it all together. He has won everywhere he's been, and I knew as soon as he got that job that they were going to be good pretty quickly. And I think that they're definitely one of the top teams in Louisiana this year. I'm going to hop down to Division IV Select, and I'm going to take what might possibly be the best nickname in all of Louisiana, the Kentwood Kangaroos.
Yeah, I like that.
That's a division I think is wide open. There's 4 or 5 teams I think could win it, but if I had to handicap it with what they have returning, and it kind of they got off to a slow start last year and kind of turned. I think that this year I'm looking for them to put it all together and make a run.
Yeah, I like that Kentwood team a lot. Obviously made a deep run. You mentioned in the playoffs last year, had an emphatic win against Southern Lab, the district rivals. Another one of those situations where whatever happens in the regular season suddenly can almost become a detriment to the winner when you have to run into the same team again and you're trying to get high school kids to focus in correctly. It presents some challenges when you have to run into the same team a couple of times. And there are some situations in that Division IV bracket, not quite as many as in the Division I select bracket, but Kentwood and Southern Lab is one that certainly stands out quite a bit. I will, continuing along, man, I'm torn on some of these. I'm going to go ahead and double up on D2 teams and take Lutcher, who probably not a huge surprise to folks to hear them in a state championship draft conversation. They obviously have some key pieces to replace in that offensive backfield and defensive line and, all over the field. But Lutcher is as consistent as public school teams are around the state. And I think in an open division, like a Division II non-select, I'll be happy to have them on my roster here. They're a team that if they hadn't run into Cecilia in the wrong place in a playoff bracket last year, maybe we're talking about them far deeper into the postseason. And similarly, just kind of continuing to fill out our roster of Cecilia victims from last year. I'll take Plaquemine, who made it to the semifinals for the first time in a decade last year. And I think they have a couple of key places to have guys step into big shoes, like the quarterback and running back spots where Nico Victorian and Tyrese Mosby were so great. But, with their guys, Miles and Collins, a couple young guys with some talent there's a lot of returning experience around them. The receiving core is back. The defense almost entirely back, led by Roderick Bingham, the Cajuns committed safety. And so I really like a lot of what the Green Devils bring back, and I'll go ahead and take them as well.
There's only one bracket that we have stayed away from, and that's the Division II select bracket, correct? We have not.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
To be honest with you, I'm still not sure I'm ready to get there yet because it's so wide open.
And I hope people that watch this kind of understand that this isn't a straight ranking of here is the best team or here is the likeliest team, but there are a lot of dynamics at play of just kind of trying to forecast, okay, this is our top tier, or, the other guy took one from here, so I need to kind of answer that and cover a base potentially. And so it's a little bit, roundabout in a lot of ways. And this is not in any way a knock to any of those D2 select teams. Someone's going to win a state championship, obviously, and there's some good ones.
Yeah, there's 4 or 5 teams that like all kind of rank similarly, and so it's not a they're not good. It's a trying to who's more likely to win it, type of thing. And I'm going to pick my number 1 team that I have right now in that division, and that's Madison Prep.
I thought I could wait on them because I don't think a ton of people view the Chargers as the top team there. They got 1 first place vote in the Class 3A LSWA poll, and it's not a spoiler because it's out, but it was me. I watched them battle Central in the scrimmage, and then Central turn around and obviously get a couple key pieces back and beat up on a good East Ascension team. But Madison Prep beat U High in the district last year. They were a deep run team last year. They bring a ton back. They've got a few new key additions or younger guys that, are very clearly looking like they're ready to take the next step. And so I love the Chargers team this year. And I think they're in a, like you mentioned before, kind of a tightly packed group, but I think they're not getting as much respect in that group as they should.
Well, they're mine now, so sorry about that, Jared.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna hop over, and this is a team that I just, I'm curious, how they respond to when you lose a player who's meant so much to your program, kind of been your guy for several years, and that's the Oak Grove Tigers with Jackson Bradley graduating and heading off to Louisiana Tech. Go Bulldogs! But Ryan Gregory does such a great job with that program. Every year, I feel confident that semifinals, championship, they're going to be there at the end. And this is more of a program pick than it is I have some inside information that the new quarterback is going to, be better than Jackson Bradley or anything like that. I trust Ryan Gregory and his staff to figure things out and be there at the end. So give me the Oak Grove Tigers.
Yeah, good deal with those guys. Now that the the Pandora's box or the Pringle can or whatever is open on D2 Select, I'll go ahead and dive in as well. And I will take the Chargers division foe, U High Cubs, and E.D. White, a team that was right there in the dome last year as the state runners up to that great Archbishop Shaw run. And so give myself a couple. Those 3 are kind of in that division to me, the top tier this season. There's certainly some others that are kind of right there, and I wouldn't argue with someone that wants to put a couple of them kind of in that same footing, but those are the 3 to me. And so since I didn't get Madison Prep, I'm gonna go ahead and take the other 2.
I like it. Let's see. I'm gonna hop back down to, actually, I have not taken a Division 4 non-select team yet.
Correct.
You grabbed the Golden Tornado, who was number 1 on my list, but I'm going to go ahead and grab the defending state champion, South Plaquemine. And then while I am in Division 4, I'm going to hop over, and I've already picked Kentwood, but I'm also going to pick Vermilion Catholic as well in Division 4 Select.
And that's an area, I think that's the last place that I don't have someone is in that same Division 4 Select bracket. So if if folks have been paying attention to my draft, obviously that means one of my next picks is coming from right there. I'll take Ouachita Christian, the runner-up to the VC Eagles from last year's dome game. I'll also go ahead and take Riverside, who was a team that we talked some about last year that we both liked going into the season. A team that I really thought had a great chance to make it to the dome, if not bring home the big trophy back to reserve after their runner-up run a year before. They returned some good experience, talent, all those things in the trenches that I think always bodes well, particularly with a smaller school team. Boogie, Kendrick Johnson, Boogie, they call him, just a sophomore this year, but already has 2 years of varsity experience under his belt. They've got a young quarterback in Brock Bourgeois that has a couple of years of experience under his belt and kind of on down the list. And so it's a team that I think is around deep in the playoffs for sure and has a chance to go make the real big run potentially.
Yeah, I always feel good when your pick is next on my list, and I had OCS and Riverside at 3-4 and Division 4 select. So holding to it there. I'm looking. I believe that I have a selection in every division, so I'm good there. Now I just kind of got to fill out some of my depth.
So these are your last two picks, and everything's on the board for you except for D1 select, where you have the three teams. Yeah.
All right. So let me grab, and I'm so curious about, coaching change, no more Diesel, but I'm a huge fan of Braylon Calais, and I just feel like he's going to have a monster year. I hope they get the ball in his hands as much as possible. Give me Cecilia in Division II non-select. And then for my last pick, I'm going to pick a team that I saw last year that when I saw them wasn't the best version of themselves, but I feel like this year we're going to get the best version of themselves, and that's Destrehan. I think what they have returning and the talent that they have on both sides of the ball, they're definitely a contender in Division I non-select. So that's going to be my final selection.
And I have one more, and I mean similarly to what you just had. I don't have to pick any specific division. I have all of them open for me, and so I just have to figure out, to some degree, maybe which one of these is most open. Or who we want to talk about most. Or actually, no, I have 3 Division II non-select, so that one's off the board for me. I will go with I'm going to go with Calvary Baptist, a school that started off our draft last year, and I'll make sure that they get an opportunity in here. This doesn't feel like the same type of way that we've talked about Calvary Baptist in recent years, where they're up there as the top small school team and going to compete with 5As and whatnot. But it does feel like a potentially really strong Division III select team still that is going a little bit under the radar for a lot of folks because of it just being a little bit different in recent years. They didn't get back to the dome last year and all those things, but they just had a pretty strong physical performance against a good Union Parish team in the Jamboree. there is still talent there. Braylon Hugelon, a fantastic two-way standout for the Cavs, and he's kind of the tip of the iceberg for some of the other guys they have there. And I think this year's team has a little bit of a different chip on its shoulder too. And so I'm interested to see. I think they can compete with anybody in the division on the right night. And so we'll see how it goes.
The funny thing about them, like last year, there were some people who thought they might be the best team in all of Louisiana at this point last year. And I got to see them in week 2, and they gave Neville every single thing that they wanted. I mean, and you know how I feel about Neville. I thought they were the best team in the state at that point last year. And so I came away extremely impressed. And now this year they're kind of flying under the radar. And I think that sometimes can be, a really motivating factor for some of these kids that like, hey, everybody's counting us out, and, they kind of bring it and go play. There's a lot of tradition there. They know how to win. It's a great program. Coach Ewan does a great job.
Yeah. And we leaned primarily, more of the bigger school teams, some of those Division I's we kind of loaded up and had, 10 total Division I teams between the two different brackets. And the only teams that we had taken so far in Division III Select were LCA and Dunham. And I certainly think the Calvarys of the world, the Catholic New Iberias of the world. I think Lafayette Renaissance is on the rise in a big way and going to make some noise this year. There's some other good teams there. And so that was an area where I thought it was worth grabbing a third team potentially and taking that.
Definitely. I was looking at that Catholic New Iberia team that you talked about. I really, really like. And another one that, Bunkie had such a great year last year, historic season. They have to replace 2 superstars, but they've got some really talented players in Zion Lee and Ron Patterson. And so I'm really excited about what Bunkie's able to do. Can they follow up on that semifinal performance with another one? So those 2 teams were right there on the radar for me there in Division III Select as well.
For folks that check this out this week, I guess tell them where you'll be at. My plan is Thursday at Newman and St. Charles, and Friday at the Ruston versus Acadiana, which you caught the flip side of that last year up in Ruston. I know Thursday you've got Westphal and Alexandria. Is that
Friday? So it's a Friday game. Yeah. So I'll be at that one, and I'll be at a lot of Alexandria games this year. But I do have some other. Week 2. I'm going up for Benton Airline. I've got that one circled. I'm really excited about that game. Had a chance to see Acadiana in the scrimmage, and while I think they've got some stuff to clean up offensively, that defense is really, really good. I came away thinking, man, Ash is struggling on offense, and then we turned right back around and looked really good against Sterlington. So I came away from that Jamboree being like, well, maybe Acadiana's defense is just way better than I gave them credit for. They don't look it on the D line. They look great. Obviously Darius McKinley, they've got a lot of size. And then on the back 7, they just kind of look like a bunch of high school kids, but man, they get after it. And that was a team that I didn't get to them, but I had Acadiana 5th on my D1 select list. They're a team that's on the kind of right there. A lot of people question with the coaching change, and they lost so many players from last year, but haven't already seen them live. If they can clean up some of the turnovers, that veer is hard to stop, and they're gonna win a lot of football games.
It's a long season. I mean, what we've seen in August may look very different in September, let alone once you get into October, November, and for the special few into December. And so looking forward to watching how all these teams kind of come together, and super excited that we've got 4 quarters of action on Friday night this week. Looking forward to being back out there. Brett, appreciate you as always, man. I'm glad we had a chance to do this again this year and chop it up. I'd love to continue making this kind of an annual thing. He's Brett McCormick. I'm Jet Roser for Louisiana versus all y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in, and looking forward to seeing y'all out there on some Friday nights soon as well.